Namaste, and welcome back to Waking Up with Mindful Serenity. It's been a few days since I've been here, and I know I haven't been making these appearances very often in the last little bit. I've been busy with other things, but it's still important that we all do our best to get out there with anything that we're learning, and our ability to share it is extremely important and gets practiced by every time we do share what we're learning. Learning and teaching, again, remember, are two sides of the same coin. I'm going to reach in, pull out a question as I just did. Whew, okay. And I am going to take a deep breath as I set my timer. This is a good one. It's actually a question I put in there the other day. And the question was, how does synchronicity relate to remote viewing? How does synchronicity relate to remote viewing? And that's a wonderful question. The word synchronicity was first termed by Carl Jung, a famous psychiatrist who studied under Freud, but who became very interested in things like dreams and our unconscious and shadow work, those unconscious parts of ourselves that we've somehow disconnected from. And he also was very much into the idea that there was random occurrences in life that were not so random. The word coincidence, which we tend to think of as when we say, oh, that's just coincidence, when things seem to happen for some reason and they're connecting, they have meaning for us, is simply coinciding. So it's incidents that coincide, that come about at the same time in real life, our real time. Well, if time, again, is just a relative concept, right? But what we understand as real time, we have these incidences that are occurring and they seem to match. And we say, wow, isn't that kooky? I think Einstein probably would refer to it as spooky action at a distance, right? This non-locality, this quantum entanglement. So when we talk about synchronicity, we have these events occurring, chronic, sync. They're syncing with the time. So we have an incident that's syncing with our understanding of real time. When a person remote views, which is something that people say, well, that's just woo-woo, it doesn't happen. But there's all kinds of science around that, right? It's not just a woo-woo nonsense term. In fact, the Army intelligence in the United States had been using remote viewing in a project called Stargate for 20 years. Right, for 20 years before the CIA took it over and said, oh, that's just nonsense. That doesn't work. All the information that was gained in those 20 years is too vague. And that was until it became declassified. All the work done in Stargate became declassified. It was very, very top secret and classified for those 20 years that was taking place. But when it became declassified after the CIA took it over, you could see that these things the remote viewers were finding was far, far, far from vague, very precise. And we can look at people like McMonagall and Russell Targ, and there were so many of them that were involved in that, whose work shows almost precise connection between what they were seeing and writing down under very strict experimental guidelines. There was no way of cheating or lying or, and so what they were finding compared to what the targets were unbelievably precise in some cases. Yes, there was near misses, and yes, there was wrongs, and yes, there was some things that you just want to throw out and say that doesn't connect, it's not real. But in most cases, there was so much synchronicity, so much in sync with what's happening. So what the individual was doing in their time was imagining the target, getting all the sensory data they could from the target. Well, what color was it? What did it feel like inside me? What was the texture? What was the dimensions? What was, was there any sense of taste or smell or any of the other sensory inputs that I get when I think about this target? All they would have is a number, nothing more, just a number. And by thinking of that number and connecting it to something that was unseen to them, they were tested on whether or not the information they were getting would match what the actual target was. And in many cases, it was so precise, it was scary. It was spooky action at a distance. Because what they were seeing from the distance they were away from the target, and the target could have been across the world, what they were seeing while they sat in those offices under very strict observation and guidelines would match what that target actually was. And there's proof and evidence of this. Of course, it gets dismissed as just coincidence. But the word coincidence, again, means two incidents occurring at the same time, like synchronicity, incidents occurring at the same time. So what the individual was writing down on their paper under these strict observations and guidelines would match what was actually occurring in real time in that other area that they were somehow picking up data from through a number, nothing more than a target number. No idea of what it was, a place, person, thing, where it was. And they would pick up these very strong sensory inputs and write them down under this guidelines that was established by people like Russell Tarr, I believe, and Joseph Monogonal, I don't know if I say this, McMonagle, and others who were parts of the Stargate program. And again, that went on afterwards to be studied in research institutes, in university level research institutes. And again, continued to find these remarkable findings, remarkable connections, remarkable matches. Not everybody was successful, and all the people they tried to train to do this were successful in getting the amount of information, say, that Joseph McMonagle could get or Russell Tarr could get, but they were able, there was enough evidence to prove that yes, these people were really picking up information at a distance. They were remote viewing, right? They were seeing things remotely without actually being there. Now, it's never clear, like I'm going to say that I try remote viewing because I want to understand consciousness. I want to understand who I am. I love science, so I'm going to do it under the strict scientific guidelines that were set up in institutes like Stargate. And I want to follow the mandate set up by Joseph McMonagle or Russell Targ, and I want to do it under strict guidelines. And Russell Targ, by the way, was a physicist. He was a physicist before and he was an atheist, and he never believed in any of these connections until his daughter, who was also a psychiatrist, started experimenting with parapsychology, and she influenced him. And again, and he worked with this institute that studied this type of phenomenon, psi phenomenon. So he did convert to understanding that our paradigms, as limited as they seem right now, are actually not enough to explain reality and explain who we are. So as an individual like myself who loves science, wants to do it under scientific measures so that I can have validation to some degree, that I can say, hey, see, this is proof. At the same time, I'm a person who's, I want to be yogi. I'm wanting to experiment with the higher levels of consciousness that we may, tap into through meditation and other deep and reflective practices. I also am a person who wants to ask that question daily, who am I? Like, who am I really? Beyond this body, beyond this mind, beyond this personality. It's a question I ask myself almost every day. So that being said, remote viewing seems to be a wonderful way for me to experiment with what consciousness is. What am my own paradigm? Is my own paradigm thinking reality? Because no matter where I go and how much I progress, I still have this very scientific, materialistic mindset that I've been conditioned to believe in, and everything is matter. Anything outside matter is woo-woo, and it's too uncomfortable to explore that woo-woo. So I say it's just woo, and I push it away. Right? And I think that's what happens with mainstream science, right? Even though the objective of science is constantly question the possibility of everything, we tend to think, okay, no, that's too woo-woo, that can't be, so we push that away instead of exploring the possibility of it. And think of the word possibility. Possible ability. Maybe we all have the possible ability to remote view. We just don't. We're terrified of stepping beyond the limits of what we think we know because it's comfortable and familiar. So that being said, I still wanted to experiment. So I have been experimenting with remote viewing. And I have been, and I don't want to say I have been, my findings, though they may sometimes be scrambled with the wrong targets, my findings are pretty well right on sometimes, like right on, stark, like scary, like spooky action. So, as Einstein would say, I don't understand any of it. I don't feel like I, as a human being, am doing anything. I'm just relaxed and open, in my years of meditation, my years of training my mind to be still. All that has come into play so that whatever, I can just pick up things, or things are just entering my mind. And with me, because I'm a writer and I'm a person who loves words, I know for sure it would never work with numbers. For me, I'm able to pick out words. Like I said, words come into my mind, and in true remote viewing, in the protocol set up, anything that pops into your mind like that is said to be AOL, analytic overlay, and you're supposed to write it in another column because it might be your imagination and your preconceived ideas and notions coming in, and it will carry you way off the scene of what you're actually seeing if you get too stuck on your AOL. So you're supposed to write it in a different column, and then you're just supposed to listen and watch and feel for these glimpses that may come in. It might be a shape, it might be a shadow, it might be an experience of feeling something physically in the body, it may be a color, or it may be a sound, or it may be a taste or a texture. Then you visualize the dimensions that you're seeing, and shape, size, big, large. Is it structural? Is it, soft? Whatever. And you start imagining that. And at the end of this, you're supposed to summarize what you think you're seeing is. Now with me, and any words that come in like this, like the way they seem to be downloaded into my mind, or I just seem to be hearing them, and I can't say hearing because I'm not so sure I'm actually hearing, but the words, I see the words and I know they're words. And so I write them down in quotation marks. Most of the times I put them over into the AOL section just because that's what the protocol says to do. But sometimes those words are so strong that I'll put them in next to the things that I'm sketching or drawing. And though I never summarize correctly, like I may see all the clues together, but I'll have a completely different image of it. When the picture comes up, not always matching. Sometimes if I do a session of 4 or 5 of them, I will have the pictures all mixed up. But it's a given thing that at least 3 of those will match what the target. So it's like, yeah, okay, I missed that. I've seen this, but not exactly at the time that target number came up. I seen it after that target number came up, sort of thing. So it's out of time, out of the time-space continuum. But it's usually it's scarily can be very, very accurate. And even though when I look at it, I say, oh my gosh, that's not happening. I'm not remote viewing. Remote viewing is too woo. It doesn't happen. So it must be coincidence. And I want to go back to coincidence over and over and over again in saying that the synchronicity, just because it's happening at the same time and it seems to be sinking into the moment that I'm in, synchronicity is not cool. It's not some tapping into some field of information that we all have access to. It's simply coincidence. It's just those things are happen randomly. So synchronicity and remote viewing go hand in hand, because what Carl Jung felt about synchronicity was that the consciousness was picking up information and we were bringing it into real time. And information could be in the future, it could be in the past, it could be happening right now, halfway across the world. But we're picking up information because we're all connected to one source of conscious information. And it's in the subconscious, not in the conscious mind, but in the subconscious below our conditioning that told us that we were limited and our minds could only do so much. And we could only pick up so much information, and that information had to be, be that which is coming through our 5 senses, and that's all there is, because that's all matter is, that's all reality is. So when we step beyond that paradigm, it's very woo-woo-ish, and we may resist it by saying, oh no, it can't be. It's just coincidence. It's just coincidence. But sometimes you look at the details of these remote viewing findings and you say, no, it can't be that. It has to be much more than that. Anyway, so remote viewing and synchronicity are hand in hand. They're events occurring in time and space, picking up information, and we're not limited by time. We're not limited by distance, the mind, the consciousness, what we have access to. We just have to open our minds so that that information comes through. And it's all about having an open mind. Read Russell Targ. Okay, he's a physicist, and he wrote Limitless Mind, and I'm in the process of reading that book now. Read about Joseph McMonagle's work and how he reveals the less than vague findings that came from Stargate over the 20 years he was there. Read about anyone who truly can remote view, and you just think, okay, there is something to this. There is something to this, and that brings us back to understanding psi phenomenon in all its forms. We have access to something far greater than what we believe we have access to. Consciousness is far greater than we think it is. It's not just the mind, the brain. It's not reserved to the brain. The brain is just a filter for consciousness. And the more we understand that, the more maybe we'll be willing to explore the possibilities, the possible abilities we all have within us. And I think that's something to look into. As woo-woo as you may think I am, I'm getting to the point where, no, this investigation is too important. It's much more important than my reputation and what people think of me. There's something here, and I really want to understand it and know it. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have an amazing day. Went over my time again. Namaste.